All right, and in order to complete our register controller, we need to figure out what we're doing with the password. Because at the moment, we're sending it back to the front end, which is not something that we want to do. And essentially, we have multiple approaches, and one of them is in the schema, where in the Mongoose, we can actually use select property, and then notice if it's true, the path should always be included in the results, but if it's false, then it's going to be excluded by default. And what's really cool is that we can override this on a query level. So essentially, notice you have this select true or false. And then when you're setting up the query, you can say, hey, listen, I know that I set up this property to be excluded or included, and actually I want to include that in the query. And I'll show you in our project as well, so that way you'll have a better understanding. Now, here's the gotcha though. Since we use user.create, it is not going to work. So let me showcase that. First, what I want to do is go to user.js, and then where I have the password, I'm going to go with select, and I'll set it equal to false. So I don't want to share that. For example, if I'm going to use find one, then password will be excluded. However, in this case, like I just mentioned, since we're using user create, we'll still get back the password. And I know that some people might find this annoying, but let me showcase that. Where essentially everything is saved here, everything works properly, and then once I send, yep, I still have the password. So in this case, we have two options. We can create utils folder and just create a function that gets me the values that I'm looking for. Effectively, what I want to get is email, last name, location, and name. That's going to be set up here in this user object, or in this case, I can just hardcode them. Now, since in login and update user, we'll use different methods. So we're not going to use create, and effectively by doing so, we won't get back the password, which is exactly what I'm looking for. In this case, I'll just hardcode. Again, if there's multiple places where you need to do that, it kind of makes sense to set up the function. So in this case, here's what I want to do. I simply want to go with user. That's going to be my object, and I'll say email is equal to user email. Then the last name will be equal to what? Well, user, and then dot, and last name, correct? So that's what we're sending back. Then we want to do the same thing with location. That's going to be user and location. And then lastly, you can probably already guess that we're going to be looking for name and user.name. Again, I fully understand that you're looking at this location. You're like, what is wrong with you, man? Why are you doing this? Trust me, once we get to this point on the front end, you'll see why we're doing these acrobatics. So yes, the select false works really nicely, but not with this particular dot create. So let me navigate quickly back to my database. Let me remove the John one more time. And then let's try it out, where in our response, we should get the properties that we just set up in the user object. So let me send it. And what do you know? I have email, last name, location, and name. And that matches exactly what I was setting up over here. And with this in place, now we can move on to our next step.